Hey besties, before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now, where you're watching from. Whether it's sunrise in Jamaica, midnight in California, afternoon in Paris, or evening in South Africa. I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. Adaeze Okafor watched in shock as the stranger collapsed onto her classroom floor, his expensive leather briefcase scattering papers like harmattan dust across the cracked concrete. Blood pooled beneath his black akbada, spreading in dark crimson fingers that reached toward her students' worn plastic sandals. 23 pairs of wide eyes stared at the man who'd burst through their classroom door only moments before, gasping about chest pains and begging for help in broken Igbo. The old clock in Umunze Primary School's most neglected classroom ticked like a countdown to disaster. Adaeze's heart hammered against her ribs as she dropped to her knees beside the stranger, her faded Ankara wrapper absorbing dust from floors that hadn't seen proper cleaning in months. His face was pale beneath dark skin, lips turning ashen, breathing shallow and desperate. She pressed her ear to his chest. His heartbeat stuttered like a dying generator. "Umuaka, step back," she whispered in Igbo, her voice steady despite terror clawing at her throat. Little Chioma Eze clutched her worn exercise book tighter. Kelechi Anusu's mouth hung in silent shock. These children had seen enough hardship, hungry bellies, parents who sold vegetables by roadside, school fees paid in installments. They didn't need to witness death, too. But Adaeze knew what she had to do. She'd grown up in these same red earth streets of a number estate, understood that sometimes you only get one chance to save a life. Her hands trembled as she positioned them over the stranger's chest, remembering the first aid training she'd taken in Aqua with money saved from weekend teaching jobs. The headmaster's office was across the dusty compound. The school nurse had gone to Onitsha Market. Medical help would take 40 minutes to reach this forgotten village. 40 minutes this man didn't have. She began chest compressions, feeling his ribs flex under her palms. 1, 2, 3. His expensive gold chain caught the afternoon sunlight through jealousy windows, casting tiny glints across his unconscious face. Who was he? What brought a man in handmade shoes to our school where chalk was rationed and students shared textbooks? "Teacher Adaeze," whispered Ngozi Okwu. "Oga Anu? Will he die?" Adaeze didn't answer. She couldn't. Because deep in her heart, watching the stranger's life slip away on her classroom floor, she knew that whatever happened next would change everything. The taste of red dust filled her mouth as she breathed life into a man whose identity would soon turn her world upside down. 3 weeks earlier, Adaeze had walked through the rusty gates of Umunze Primary School with hope burning in her chest like palm wine. The headmaster, Mr. Emeka Obi, had finally hired her after 2 years of substitute teaching across a number of villages. Her teaching certificate from University of Nigeria, Nsukka, meant everything to her. It was her escape from the poverty that had swallowed her family whole. The school compound sprawled beneath tolling palm trees, red earth packed hard by countless bare feet. Classrooms built during Nigeria's oil boom decades ago now crumbled like old akamu, their zinc roofs patched with rusty metal sheets. But Adaeze saw possibility where others saw decay. She'd grown up in a mud house in nearby Agula, where her mother, Mama Nkechi, still sold roasted groundnuts to survive. "You will teach primary 4, Mr. Obi had said, his belly straining against his worn shirt. "Salary is 15,000 naira monthly, no complaints." 15,000 barely covered transport and food. But Adaeze smiled anyway. Dreams don't negotiate with reality. They make their own path. Her classroom held 37 students, crammed onto wooden benches scarred by decades of use. No electricity meant lessons ended when darkness fell. No running water meant children walked half a kilometer to fetch water in plastic containers. But these children had light in their eyes that reminded Adaeze of herself at their age, hungry for knowledge, desperate to climb out of poverty's grip. She'd spent her own money buying chalk and exercise books, walking to Akella Market every Saturday to search for discounted supplies. The other teachers whispered about her dedication, some with admiration, others with suspicion. Why did this young woman care so much about children who weren't her own? The answer lived in Adaeze's memory. a teacher named Missy Fioma, who had once bought her school uniform when her father couldn't afford it. That teacher had seen potential where others saw just another poor village girl. Now, Adaeze wanted to be that life for others. But poverty is a patient hunter. It stalks dreams and devours hope when you least expect it. As Adaeze stood at her classroom door that fateful morning, 3 weeks later, watching storm clouds gather over Umunze like dark prophecy, she had no idea that her greatest act of compassion would become her deepest wound. The stranger who would collapse on her classroom floor was already walking towards her school, briefcase in hand, carrying secrets that would shatter her carefully built world. Adaze's hands ached from grading exercise books on candlelight in her small room behind Mama Ngozi's compound. The kerosene lamp cast dancing shadows across pages filled with her students' dreams, written in careful pencil strokes. Chidema Okafor wanted to become a doctor. Obinna Nwankwo dreamed of building roads. Each essay was a whispered prayer for a better tomorrow. Her phone buzzed, a text from her younger brother Chukwudi in Lagos. "Ada, I need school fees, 20,000 for exam registration." Her heart sunk like a stone in deep water. After paying rent, transport, and buying supplies for her students, she had barely 5,000 naira left. But Chukwudi was her responsibility since their father's death. She'd promised Papa on his deathbed to see her brother through university. The next morning, she arrived early to find Mr. Obi's office light already burning. Through the cracked door, she heard his voice thick with frustration. "The State Education Board is coming for inspection next week. If they see these conditions..." He paused, shuffling papers. "We need everything perfect, no disruptions, no problems." Adaeze understood the unspoken threat. Nigerian government officials could close schools for the smallest infractions. Munze Primary's license hung by threads already. Broken windows, overcrowded classrooms, missing textbooks. One bad report would scatter these children back to the streets or farms, their educations ending before they truly began. During morning assembly, she watched her students sing the national anthem with voices that carried hope across the dusty compound. Their uniforms were patched and faded, but their spirits blazed bright. Kelechi had walked 4 kilometers to school despite having no shoes. Adama shared her breakfast of boiled yam with 3 classmates whose mothers couldn't afford to feed them. These children trusted her completely. When Chioma's grandmother died, the little girl had cried in Adaze's arms. When Emeka's father was arrested for selling fruit without a permit, Adaeze had visited the police station to plead for his release. She wasn't just their teacher, she was their protector, their voice, their hope. That afternoon, as she taught about fractions using groundnut shells as visual aids, Adaeze noticed the black Mercedes parked outside the school gates. Expensive cars rarely visited Umunze except when politicians came seeking votes or when trouble followed important people. The vehicle's tinted windows reflected afternoon sunlight like dark mirrors, hiding whatever secrets lay within. She had no way to know that inside that car sat the stranger who would soon change her destiny, a man whose life she would save and whose identity would cost her everything she'd worked to build. The Mercedes remained parked outside Umunze Primary for 3 days, arriving each morning like a patient predator and leaving when school ended. Adaeze tried to ignore it, but her students whispered stories that made her skin crawl. Chioma claimed she'd seen a man inside taking pictures. Kelechi swore the car followed his older sister home from secondary school. "Teacher, why is that car watching us?" asked Ngozi during their English lesson, her small voice trembling like leaves in harmattan wind. Adaze's chest tightened. In villages like Umunze, expensive cars meant either opportunity or danger, rarely anything in between. She'd grown up hearing stories of children who disappeared, families who asked too many questions about powerful people, teachers who got too involved in community problems. Nigeria's elite lived in a world where ordinary people were expendable. That evening, she walked to the market to buy tomatoes for dinner when Mama Obiageli, the cloth seller, grabbed her arm. "Nwame, be careful," she whispered. her eyes darting toward the Mercedes parked near the town square. "That car belongs to big people, very big people. I've seen it in Aqua, always around government buildings." Fear crawled up Adaze's spine like army ants. Why would government people watch their small school? Umanze Primary was nothing special, just another forgotten institution serving forgotten children. Unless, her mind raced through possibilities. Was someone planning to shut them down? Had the inspection been moved up? Were they investigating something she didn't know about? Sleep eluded her that night. She lay on her thin mattress, listening to rain drum against her zinc roof, thinking about her students' faces. These children had already lost so much: stable homes, proper meals, parents who could afford their school fees. If Umanze Primary closed, where would they go? The nearest school was in Agulu, too far for most families to manage. The next morning brought clarity wrapped in terror. As Adaeze taught her mathematics lesson, drawing geometric shapes in red dust on the floor, a commotion erupted outside. Shouts in Igbo echoed across the compound. Mr. Obi's voice rose above the chaos, angry and desperate. Through her classroom window, she saw the Mercedes' door opening. A man in an expensive agbada stepped out, clutching his chest, his face twisted in pain. He stumbled toward the school building, briefcase dropping from his trembling fingers, papers scattering like prophecy in the morning breeze. Her students pressed against the windows, watching the stranger approach their classroom door. Adaze's heart hammered against her ribs. Somehow, deep in her bones, she knew this moment would define everything that came after. The man's expensive shoes clicked against concrete as he reached for her door handle. Then he collapsed.
Adaeze's hands moved like lightning across the stranger's chest, pumping life back into his failing heart. Sweat dripped from her forehead onto his expensive agbada as she counted compressions: 15, 16, 17. Her students huddled against the back wall, some crying softly, others whispering prayers in Igbo their grandmothers had taught them. "Chinyeke biko," she breathed. "God, please." The man's face was turning gray beneath his dark skin. She tilted his head back, pinched his nose, and breathed into his lungs. His chest rose and fell with her breath. Again, again. The taste of fear filled her mouth like bitter cola. Footsteps thundered across the compound. Mr. Obi burst through the door, his eyes wild with panic. Behind him came Mrs. Adama Ikenna, the deputy headmistress, her wrapper pulled tight around her waist. "Adaeze, what did you do?" Mr. Obi's voice cracked like a whip. "He collapsed. He needed help." "But you know who this is?" Mrs. Adama Ikenna's voice dropped to a horrified whisper. She knelt beside the stranger, studying his face. "Jinyike me? This is Chief Okechukwu Udoka, Senator Udoka's elder brother." The name hit Adaeze like a slap. Everyone in Anambra knew Senator Nkem Udoka, the man who controlled government contracts, who decided which schools got funding, which roads got built, which villages got electricity. His family owned half of Aqua and had fingers in every major business from Lagos to Port Harcourt. Chief Okachukwu's eyes fluttered open. He gasped, air rushing into his lungs like a man saved from drowning. His hand gripped Adaeze's wrist with surprising strength. You saved me," he whispered in English, then switched to Igbo. "Nwanne, you medemin keoma. You did well for me." Relief flooded through Adaeze's body. He was breathing, alive. Her students crept closer, amazement replacing fear on their faces. She'd done it, saved a life with her own hands, just like doctors in the medical books she'd read as a child. But Mr. Obi's expression told a different story. His face twisted with something between terror and rage. "You touched him," he said slowly. "You put your mouth on Chief Udoka. He grabbed his head with both hands. Do you understand what you've done?" "I saved his life," Adaeze said, confusion clouding her relief. "You've killed us all." Outside, she could hear vehicles arriving, expensive cars with government plates, men shouting orders and voices accustomed to being obeyed. Chief Udoka struggled to sit up, but his strength was gone. His expensive agbada lay forgotten, papers scattered across the floor like leaves after a storm. One paper caught Adaeze's eye. It bore the Anambra state seal and words that made her blood freeze. Umunze Primary School, demolition order, approved. The demolition order burned in Adaeze's vision like a brand. Her hands shook as she reached for the scattered paper, but Mr. Obi's foot came down hard on her wrist. "Don't touch anything," he hissed, his eyes darting toward the window where black SUVs now filled the school compound like a presidential convoy. Chief Udoka struggled to sit up, but his strength failed him. His eyes locked with Adaeze's, and she saw something there that confused her. Gratitude mixed with fear? Regret? "Please," but Mr. Obi was already filling out termination papers with hands that shook like leaves in harmattan wind. "Effective immediately," he announced, "Miss Adaeze Okafor is dismissed from Umunze Primary School for gross misconduct and assault."
As the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, Adaeze looked back at her students one last time. 23 faces stared at her with confusion and betrayal. She'd promised to protect them, to be their voice, their hope. Instead, she'd become their cautionary tale, the teacher who reached too high and fell too far. The police cell in Akwa smelled of urine and despair. Adaeze sat on the concrete floor, her Ankara wrapper torn from the rough arrest, listening to her cellmate, a market woman named Patience, explain the rules of survival. "Never admit to anything," Patience whispered. "These government people, they can make you disappear like smoke." 3 days passed without word from the outside world. No lawyer, no family member, no friend came to visit. The guards brought watery rice twice daily and acted like she didn't exist. Through the small barred window, she could see palm trees swaying in harmattan wind, free and beautiful, while she rotted in this concrete box. On the 4th day, Mrs. Ikana arrived wearing a new wrapper that cost more than Adaeze's monthly salary. Her gold jewelry caught fluorescent light as she settled onto the visitor's bench with the satisfaction of a well-fed cat. "Adaeze, you look terrible," she said, examining her fingernails. "Prison doesn't suit you." "Why did you lie?" Adaeze's voice was hoarse from crying. "You know I saved that man's life." Mrs. Ikana laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Saved his life? My dear, you sealed your own fate. Do you think the Udoka family wants their dirty laundry aired? Chief Okechukwu wasn't supposed to survive that heart attack. He knew too much about certain arrangements." The words hit Adaeze like cold water. What arrangements? The demolition, of course. Umunze Primary sits on land worth billions now that the new highway is coming through. Chief Okechukwu was supposed to handle the paperwork quietly, take his share, and let the school disappear. But his conscience got the better of him. He came to warn us to try backing out of the deal. Adaeze's world crumbled like old mortar. "So you let him die?" "We tried, but you," Mrs. Ikana's voice turned venomous, "you saved the one man who could have stopped everything. Now he's alive, talking to investigators, asking uncomfortable questions. The Udoka family is furious, the developers are furious, and guess who they all blame? The children. What about the children? Already transferred to other schools, Umunze Primary closed permanently due to safety concerns after the incident. The land will be cleared next month." Mrs. Ikana stood, smoothing her wrapper. "You should have minded your own business, Adaeze. Good teachers know when to look away." That night, Adaeze lay on the cold concrete, thinking about her students scattered like seeds in wind. Chioma forced to walk 10 kilometers to school in Agulu. Kelechi probably already working on his father's farm instead of studying mathematics. Her act of mercy had destroyed the very children she'd tried to protect. But deep in her heart, beneath the crushing weight of failure and betrayal, a small flame of anger began to burn. She'd saved a man's life. She'd done what any decent person would do. If that made her a criminal in their eyes, then perhaps it was their eyes that needed examining. Through the barred window, stars watched over Anambra State like ancient witnesses. Somewhere out there, Chief Okechukwu was alive because of her hands, her breath, her refusal to let death win. Maybe Mrs. Ikana was right. Maybe good teachers knew when to look away. But Adaeze was beginning to understand she'd never been good at looking away. On her 7th day in custody, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Different footsteps, confident and purposeful, accompanied by voices speaking in hushed tones. The metal door clanged open, and Adaeze looked up from her corner to see a man in an expensive suit standing in the doorway. Not Chief Okechukwu, but someone whose face carried the same noble bearing. "Miss Adaeze Okafa," he said in perfect English, then switched to Igbo. "I am Barrister Chike Udoka, Chief Okechukwu's son." Adaeze scrambled to her feet, her heart hammering. Had he come to gloat, to threaten her, to ensure she never spoke about what really happened in that classroom? But his eyes held no malice. Instead, she saw something that made her breath catch. Genuine gratitude mixed with deep shame. "My father has been asking for you. He wants to see you." "I don't understand." Barrister Udoka glanced at the guard, who suddenly found urgent business elsewhere. "My father told me everything. How you saved his life, how the school officials lied, how you were arrested for an act of mercy." His voice cracked slightly. "Do you know what he was doing at your school that day?" "I don't know." Adaeze shook her head, though she suspected she knew. "He was bringing those demolition papers to be signed, a business deal worth hundreds of millions. But when he walked through your compound, saw those children learning under broken roofs, sharing textbooks, his conscience couldn't bear it. He came to your classroom to confess, to ask for your help in stopping the demolition." The puzzle pieces clicked together in Adaeze's mind. That's why he collapsed. The stress of betraying his family's business partners, yes. My father has been involved in many questionable deals over the years, but those children's faces haunted him. He was going to expose everything. Barrister Udoka pulled out an envelope thick with legal documents. "Then you saved his life, and the others saw an opportunity to silence him permanently. Make it look like you attacked him, get you arrested, discredit any testimony he might give. But he's alive. He can tell the truth."
He's been trying, but who believes a sick old man over respected school officials? Who listens to someone the newspapers have painted as corrupt?
They've been very clever, these people. Very thorough. Adaeze sank back onto her concrete bed. So nothing changes. The school is closed, the children are scattered, and I rot in here. Not if I can help it. He handed her the envelope. My father has been gathering evidence for weeks, bank records, recorded conversations, signed confessions from others involved. He wants to make this right, starting with getting you out of here. Through the barred window, Adaeze could see storm clouds gathering over Aqua like dark prophecy. But for the first time in days, she felt something stirring in her chest that wasn't despair. "There's something else," Barrister Udoka said softly. "My father wants to fund a new school. Proper buildings, trained teachers, full scholarships for every child from Umunze. But he wants you to run it." Hope bloomed in Adaeze's heart like a flower after rain. The courthouse in Aqua buzzed with tension as thick as monsoon clouds. Adaeze sat between Barrister Udoka and his colleague, watching Mr. Obi and Mrs. Ikena whisper frantically with their lawyer, a thin man whose expensive suit couldn't hide his nervous sweat. News reporters filled the gallery, their cameras focused on the drama about to unfold. Chief Ukechukwu entered leaning heavily on a walking stick, his once powerful frame still recovering from his heart attack, but his eyes burned with righteous fire. As he raised his right hand to swear the oath, "I, Okechukwu Udoka, swear to tell the truth before Almighty God and this honorable court." The prosecutor, a sharp-faced woman named Barrister Amaka Okonkwo, wasted no time. "Barrister Udoka, please tell the court what happened on the morning of November 15th at Umunze Primary School." Chief Okechukwu's voice was still weak, but his words carried the weight of absolute truth. "I went to that school to commit a sin against innocent children. I carried papers that would destroy their only chance at education for the sake of money. But when I saw those young faces, my conscience wouldn't let me do it." The courtroom was silent as death. Mr. Obi shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his face pale as morning mist. "I went to confess to Miss Adaeze Okafur, to ask for her help in stopping the demolition. The stress of betraying my business partners, the weight of my guilty conscience, my heart couldn't bear it. I collapsed in her classroom." Chief Okechukwu turned to look directly at Adaeze. "This woman saved my life with her own hands. She breathed life back into my dying body while my accomplices watched and planned their lies." Barrister Okonkwo produced a tablet device. "Your Honor, I present Exhibit A, audio recordings made by Chief Udoka of conversations with the defendants." Mr. Obi's voice filled the courtroom, tinny but clear. "If Okechukwu dies, our problems are solved. The girl will take the blame, the school closes quietly, and the developers get their land." Mrs. Ikena's laughter followed. "Perfect! A poor teacher's word against ours? Who will believe her?" The courtroom erupted. Mr. Obi jumped to his feet, shouting denials in panicked Igbo, but the damage was done. Mrs. Ikena sat frozen, her expensive jewelry suddenly looking like fool's gold under the harsh courtroom lights. But the prosecutor wasn't finished. "Chief Udoka, what else did you discover during your investigation? Ghost teachers on the payroll, missing textbook funds, bribes taken from parents who couldn't afford school fees? These people have been stealing from the poorest children in Anambra State for years." Judge Emeka Nwusu, a dignified man with silver hair, banged his gavel. "Order in this court." He studied the defendants with eyes that had seen too much corruption in his long career. "Mr. Obi, Mrs. Ikena, you stand accused not only of false accusations and conspiracy, but of embezzlement and child endangerment. How do you plead?" Their lawyer whispered urgently in their ears, but the fight had gone out of them. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, forged documents, recorded confessions from construction companies who'd paid bribes. "Guti, Your Honor," Mr. Obi whispered. Thunder crashed outside the courthouse as if the sky itself was celebrating justice. Adaeze felt tears streaming down her cheeks, not tears of joy, but of vindication, of truth finally breaking free from the darkness where it had been buried. 6 months later, Adaeze stood before the gates of Okechukwu Memorial Academy, watching her students, her children, run across the pristine compound with joy that lit up the morning sky. The new school rose from red earth like a promise kept, its modern classrooms filled with computers, its libraries stocked with thousands of books, its laboratory equipped for real science experiments. Chioma Eze raced towards her, school bag bouncing against her back, her face bright with excitement. "Teacher Adaeze! Teacher Adaeze! I got the highest score in mathematics!" Behind her came Kelechi, Ngozi, and all the others. Every single child from the old Umunze primary now thrived in this place built from justice and redemption. Chief Okechukwu sat in his wheelchair beneath a massive Iroko tree, watching his money transform into something beautiful. His heart attack had left him physically frail, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. "You were right to save me, Nwam," he told Adaeze in Igbo, "even when I didn't deserve saving." The school bell rang, not the cracked brass bell from their old classroom, but a melodious chime that carried across the compound like a song of hope. Students filed into classes where qualified teachers waited with lesson plans and dreams. The kitchen served hot meals to every child, no fees required. The clinic treated sick students free of charge.
But the most beautiful sight was the scholarship wall in the main hallway. Photographs of students who'd gone on to universities across Nigeria, their success stories written in careful handwriting for future generations to read. 3 had already become doctors. 5 were studying engineering. 2 had opened businesses that employed their neighbors. Adaeze's phone buzzed with a text from Chukwudi in Lagos. "Ada, I graduated! First-class honors in computer science! Coming home next week to help with the school's new technology program." As afternoon shadows lengthened across the compound, Adaeze walked through her classrooms one final time before heading home. In Primary 4, she found a note on her desk written in careful pencil. "Teacher, my mama says you are like Chineke's hands on earth. Thank you for saving us all. Chioma." Outside, the same Mercedes that once filled her with dread now served as Chief Okechukwu's daily transport to the school he funded. Mr. Obi and Mrs. Ikena were serving prison sentences in Enugu, their stolen money returned to education programs across Anambra State. But the real victory wasn't in their punishment. It was in the sound of children laughing, learning, dreaming bigger dreams than poverty had ever allowed them to imagine. As Adaeze locked the school gates and began her walk home through streets now bustling with small businesses funded by the Academy's Community Development Program, she reflected on the strange path that had brought her here. A moment of mercy had cost her everything she thought she wanted and given her something she'd never dared to dream. Sometimes, saving one life means saving them all. Sometimes the darkest moments give birth to the brightest futures. And sometimes, when you refuse to look away from suffering, the whole world changes. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear that mercy is never wasted, that good deeds ripple through time like stones thrown into still water, and that sometimes the smallest acts of courage can move mountains. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them the most.